Welcome to your next video on writing a linear equation. Today we're going to focus on how to write the equation given a description. Before we start, we have some vocabulary that we want to make sure you understand, because within the description there's obviously going to be some written words that you're going to have to convert into an equation. So let's start with the x-intercept. We know this as the spot or the point where the line crosses the x-axis. So in a problem, when you see the words x-intercept, what we want you to do is to convert that to an ordered pair. And whenever you write the ordered pair, you're obviously going to have a number for the x value and a 0 for the y value. The next vocabulary word is just the y-intercept. So very similar to the x-intercept. We know it as where the line crosses the y-axis. Sorry about that. But when we see that in the description, we want to make sure that you write that as an ordered pair as well. And this time for the y-intercept, the 0 is going to be in the x coordinate, and then y1 will have the number. The next vocabulary word is hopefully a familiar one, rate of change, and that is just code for the slope. So you could say undefined rate of change, has no rate of change, or has a 0 rate of change, or it could just give you a number. And anytime you see that word, you want to convert that to the slope. Lastly, you may see the phrase crosses the x or the y axis. And this is just a more lengthy way of saying the x-intercept or the y-intercept. So you're going to do the same thing that we did up above, and you're just going to convert that vocabulary to an ordered pair, putting the 0 in the appropriate spot. So how about some steps to get you focused when you're reading through these descriptions? The very first thing we're going to have you do is find the slope. So just like we did when we were looking for the equation from 2 points, finding the slope really tells you what kind of an equation you're going to go for and what type of a line it is. So step 1 is to identify the slope. Based on that slope, you need to figure out exactly like I said, which type of line you're dealing with. And we have 3 choices. We have the diagonal line, the horizontal line, and the vertical line. And then depending upon which type of line you have, that's going to determine the equation. So our third step is to actually write the equation. If it is a diagonal line, you are going to start with the point slope form. That should be familiar after your previous practice. And once you've gotten the slope and the point plugged into point slope form, you then have to solve for y or simplify so that you get it into slope intercept form. This is the one that's going to take the most amount of time and require the most amount of work. If it is a horizontal line, you will only have a y in the equation, and it's just going to be y equals a number, and we put y1 there because it could be whatever the y coordinate is for the points or the information that you're given. Similarly, the vertical line will only have x's in it, and again, it's just going to be x equals a number, whatever that x coordinate is. So let's practice with a few examples. Our first example says, write the equation for the line that has a slope of -4 and contains the point 1, -7. What you want to do is start circling and labeling stuff. So slope of 4, or slope of -4. Let's circle that, and that's going to be our m, or our slope. And right away, we know that that gives us a diagonal line. Now, looking at the point, I want you to label that. So put your x1, y1. And since it is a diagonal line, we are going to start by writing out the point slope form of the equation, just like we did before. If you're wondering where these are coming from, it's y minus y1. So we have y minus a -7 equals the slope, and then times x minus x1. Now we have to do some simplifying. On the left-hand side, we're going to get rid of that double negative and change it to y plus 7. And on the right-hand side, we are going to distribute the -4. Be careful with your negatives, because when you take -4 times -1, you do get a positive 4. Now we have to get y by itself, so our last step is to subtract 7 from both sides. Make sure you only combine the like terms, and we end up with y equals -4x minus 3. And this is in slope-intercept form. Our next example. This time, our equation has a rate of change of 1.5. Remember, we talked about the vocab. A rate of change is just code for slope. So step 1, identify the slope. M is 1.5. That's going to be a diagonal line. It's very much like saying 3/2. So you'd be going up 3 and over 2. Again, we have a point that our line passes through. So we're going to label that x1, y1. And because it's diagonal, we are going to start with the point slope form. So y minus y1 equals m times the quantity x minus x1. Then we have the same process that we just went through. We're going to bring down the y minus 5. In this case, there's nothing to simplify. And then we're going to distribute the 1.5. And don't worry about the decimal. That's fine. As long as we started with a decimal, we can end with 1. So 1.5 times the negative 4 will give us a negative 6. Next, we're going to get y by itself. So we're going to add 5 to both sides, only combining the like terms. And we end up with the slope-intercept form of y equals 1.5x minus 1. Example 3. Write the equation for the line that has an x-intercept of 3 and crosses the y-axis at negative 2. This is a lot of times where students get stuck, but if you refer back to your vocabulary lesson at the start, you're just going to turn this into two ordered pairs. So an x-intercept of 3 means we're going to write that as 3, 0. Crosses the y-axis at negative 2 is just a fancy way of giving you the y-intercept. So we're going to write that as 0, negative 2. Now, we are right back to the previous lesson where we're starting with 2 points. And so we, again, step 1, have to start by finding the slope. This time, we're going to do some side work. We have to figure out what the slope is by actually doing the slope formula. So we have the slope formula written here for you to recall. And now we just plug in our numbers. So m equals, actually, let's start by labeling our points so you know what x1, y1, and x2, y2 are. Now we can start subbing this in. So y2 minus y1 is negative 2 minus 0 over x2, which is 0, minus x1, which is 3. On the top, we have a negative 2, and on the bottom, we have a negative 3, which is not quite simplified. Even though the numbers don't reduce, the negative signs do. So your slope is going to be 2/3. Again, we have a diagonal line. With a diagonal line, we want to start with the point slope form. So we have y minus y1, which in this case is 0, equals 2/3, and then in the parentheses, x minus 3. Now right away, some of you are going to be panicking with a fraction, but just leave it as 2/3. When you multiply 2/3 times x, we get 2/3 x. And then when we multiply the 2/3 times the negative 3, let's just write it off to the side here. Just do a little scratch work. So it's really just 2/3 times negative 3 over 1. You'll notice that those 3's are just going to cross cancel, and we get negative 2. You could also just multiply straight across and say negative 6 over 3, but that still reduces to negative 2. So we end up with minus 2. Now our last step to isolate y is to add 0, and some of you may have already just dropped the 0. And our final equation in slope-intercept form is y equals 2/3 x minus 2. So remember, the key to get this one started was to turn that vocab into ordered pairs, and then just fall back on a process that we've already used. Our last example, write the equation for the vertical line through the point negative 7, negative 3. Let's circle vertical line. Even though we are not told the slope and we don't have enough information to calculate the slope, we know that a vertical line has an undefined slope. Now we're using that slope to determine the type of line, but actually in this case we were already told. We were told that we have a vertical line. So step 3 is to write the equation, and let's just start with the general form. It's x equals x1. We are given an ordered pair, so let's go back and label that x1, y1. So in this case, our work is done. It's just x equals negative 7. This concludes your video. You may now start the practice.